Welcome to Washoe Life, our podcast from the Communications Division here at Washoe County. I'm Nancy Lewinhagen.
And I'm Tammy Cummings.
Thank you for joining me today, Tammy.
Oh, I'm just tickled to be here.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Big integral part of our team here at Washoe County. Couldn't do what we do without you.
Well,
I'm glad you're
thank
here.
you.
Well, and we've got a big guest here today.
We do. So March is Women's History Month, and we are shining a spotlight on an icon from Northern Nevada. And I promise you, today's guest is definitely somebody you want to know. So get ready to be inspired.
Lynn Atcheson is a native Nevadan born in White Pine County. She's significantly contributed to the Reno and Washoe County communities through her leadership roles. Professionally, she's held key positions at Sierra Pacific Power Company. I stumbled because that's NV Energy now, right? Harrah's as the Director of Public Affairs. Washoe Health System, now Renown Health. Also notably, Lynn is a founding member of the Nevada Women's Fund, which is an organization dedicated to empowering women here in Northern Nevada, and just a fantastic organization in our community. Welcome, Lynn.
Well, thank you. My pleasure to be here.
So, Lynn, I have to tell you, I'm fangirling a little bit today. Back when I was sort of cutting my teeth as a new manager at a local television broadcasting station, my colleagues and I really didn't have a lot of choices in terms of women mentors. That was before the term glass ceiling was even coined, right? So that was way beyond that. But there were three supernova stars at the time that all of us watched very carefully. The first one was Susan Hill, which ironically is our Board of County Commission chair's mom. The second one was Valerie Glenn, who I know you know, and she owned a PR and marketing agency with her father. And then the queen of them all was Lynn Atcheson. So I got to tell you that you have been so instrumental in terms of how I see my management moving forward. You were the gateway. You were the powerhouse woman that helped those of us that were really looking to see where our careers would take us. You led the path for us. So I just am so excited to be here today and talk with you about all the things that you've done. I don't think the community really understands what a huge impact you have made over decades to the quality of life that we have here in Northern Nevada. You were just such a huge contributor.
Well, I'm truly humbled and honored because I think mentoring for women is so important. And I'm 85 years old now, been retired for 20 years plus. And so it's really nice to hear. You don't know you're doing these things as life goes on and you're going to work each day and doing community things. You just don't know what your impact is. But I've always believed strongly in mentoring. And I've had such a wonderful group of women with whom I've worked for when I worked for over 30 years. But that's just so kind of you to share that with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, and I can tell you that my colleagues feel exactly the same way as they continued their careers. And I won't name names, but I will say that some of them are directors of their own organizations and corporations, and Unor happens to be one of them. So
I think I know who you're talking about. Thank you for paving our way. We really appreciate it. So I want to start with the time machine, if we can.
Yes.
I love this, and just with all of your great memories. If you could go back to any decade in Reno's history with all of your professional, which one would you revisit, and what were you doing at that time?
Oh, I might say a couple. Let me talk about the 70s, because I think the 70s, that's when the women's movement sort of started. It was a little late getting to the West Coast and to communities we were in. But I think that's when my husband was training in Salt Lake City. And that's when the Equal Rights Amendment was starting to be talked about. And I don't know, I was raised in a family with a single head of household mom. And she was a career woman and took care of 3 children, 4 children actually, and made sure that we went to college and did what we should. And so being independent and making your own decisions, having a goal, um, those things were important to me. And however, in the 70s, I really didn't think I would be working. My husband was finishing his training in medical school, and I thought we'd move back to Reno and I'd be just a housewife and raise our children. Um, but I can tell you, the 70s were really impressive. And then the 80s were great because I kind of got my legs and had great jobs. Um, I worked in the political arena for a congressman, and that really taught me a lot, and particularly about communications. And then moved on to um, Sierra Pacific Power for about 5 years. I had a heart attack while I worked there. I was only 44 years old. And it wasn't serious, but got my attention. And wasn't anything to do with the power company, but it was one of those little things in life that you totally don't expect, being very young. And then went on to Harrah's, and I loved my time at Harrah's. And Phil Satry was the CEO, and he was a wonderful CEO. And really, uh, it was a turning point then in the 80s to be selected by Phil to represent the Harrah's organization, which at that time was owned by Holiday Inn Corporation. The YWCA of New York City did an annual event, Women of Achievement, and he selected me to represent Harrah's to go to New York City and represent our company. Well, it was really, truly something extremely special. My daughter was interning in Washington, D.C., so she was able to attend, and my husband and I went. But that was, again, in the 80s, another turning point because I came home, and at that time, Fritzie Erickson was the CEO of the Nevada Women's Fund, and I said, Fritzie, we have got to do this, a version of this here. So that's really where it started. That inspired all of us, and I took on as the chair to do Women of Achievement, and we started Women of Achievement, which is the most significant fundraiser they have, and truly a awesome, if I may use that term, event that's held in Reno each year.
We attend, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful celebration where I got to learn more about you a couple of years ago, too.
That's true. That's true. Both Nancy and I have been blessed to be nominees, and we have to tell you, it certainly is one of the highlights that we have experienced. So
It was a
we have
beautiful
you to
day.
thank for
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, it definitely was a highlight. I got to ask this question though, because this is directly in relation to your experience with the Harrah's. So, what what is the most unexpected or sort of wild story that you might want to
we
share
have
with
to hear.
us?
Yeah.
I know that you could
From
share about
Harrah's.
your time working there at Harrah's.
Oh, I don't know that there was anything highly unexpected. Uh, my goal was to be a professional woman and to work in, not to be in politics, but to, Sue Wagner was a dear friend, and she was very geared toward politics. I was more geared toward the professional side. Didn't really know exactly at that time what I wanted to do, but being selected to work at Harrah's and to come in as a director, their level was supervisor, manager, director, vice president, president, and so on. So I came in as a director. I think that was the biggest surprise. And they said, what do you want your title to be? And I said, well, I was more community relations. That was my background. I'm a teacher by my degrees. I had a degree in a major in English, a minor in physical education, and a degree in secondary education. I taught at Trainer Junior High School and taught in other middle schools. But anyway, that going in as a director and I said, well, I think I'll be director of public affairs, thinking more public affairs, not as the governmental side, but more public interaction with the community. So I think that was a moment, I'll tell you, because losing my job was a huge, when I worked for the congressman, that was a huge blow. It was a job we all loved, and we had a crew of women who worked there, Fritzie Erickson was one of them. And when he lost the election, it was really very traumatizing. And then thinking, well, what do I do? Do I go on and try to find another job? But I knew I wanted to continue working. And so
We're so
finding
glad
this
you
job
did.
was fine. I ended up at the power company, but then moving on to Harrah's was truly a big moment in my life, career-wise.
I wanted to ask about Washoe Health System. Just
Mhm.
did you go from is
Yes,
that and because the county owned the
yes,
county owned the
at one
hospital,
time,
right?
yes.
Was that then?
Not then, no. It
Okay.
had converted to a private, not-for-profit. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that like?
Oh, Washoe was extremely important in my life. And the gentleman who hired me, the CEO at that time, uh, I was, there had been changes at Harrah's, and my boss, who was a wonderful guy, had been let go. So, and then they were reorganizing and changing things. And lo and behold, these things happen. You don't know why, serendipity. The CEO of Washoe came and asked me if I would be interested in coming to work there. And so it was perfect timing. It was time for me to move on from Harrah's. And I, the other goal I had been a director. My goal was to be a vice president, and that job was available for me. And again, they said, "Well, what do you want your title to be?" And so I said,
I love that.
I do too.
of marketing communications. I think I put communications at first, and then Jane Torres, who's been by my side
Yes.
working and
Yep.
professionally and as a friend for years, she came up with marketing communications. So
That's when I was at the school district. Jane was one of the first people that I met and worked with, and I absolutely just adore
Love
her.
her, yes.
Yeah.
there's no one more competent, and particularly in the communications field and public relations, she's truly outstanding.
She
And
is.
I was blessed to be able to work with her.
I'm sure she felt exactly the same way about you.
Yes. Yes.
So, can you share some insights though into some of those roles? We know what your title was and your responsibilities were, but can you share some insights on what it was like to be,
Well,
especially a woman?
very early on, I was fortunate that I had jobs that allowed me to be engaged in the community. And I was in WIN, Western Industrial Nevada, and I chaired WIN. And I decided, I don't know when this occurred, but somewhere along the way, I started reading a lot of books on leadership and got a real interest in women as leaders. I thought not enough focus was on women as leaders. Men, that was natural. They just did that and you expected it. But there wasn't a lot of focus on women as leaders. So at that time, I was reading a lot of books, and you find one that you truly like. And the one I found was by Posner, and he had these defined these aspects of leadership, of challenging the process, of not letting things be the status quo, um, and being able to speak up and speak out, not rudely, not dogmatically, but to just challenge the process. One example I give, when I was doing fundraising for Congressman Santini, we would call people to make donations. I would go out of his office, go off the congressional staff and on his campaign staff. And I would call people and ask them if they would donate. And women would say, well, I'll have to ask my husband first. And that was fine. That was probably very natural at that time. That was in the 70s. But I thought, well, women should be more in control of where funding goes and have that decision. Too bad we don't need to always ask. And so that was a little challenging the process, I think, as I grew older, and particularly in the Women's Fund. Inspiring a shared vision. And I think everyone does need a vision kind of where they want to be, where they like to work, what's the workplace like that they want to be in. And all are not the same, all are not equal. Some are more geared to women and what they can do. So inspiring a vision was important. Encouraging the heart, celebrating and and commending people and having fun parties and being silly and doing things that really let people know they're important and they're
There's
valued.
value to that.
And enabling others to act was a big one. And that's when I started to think how important mentoring. And I didn't, think, oh, I'm going to be a mentor, but that just meeting with people, and women would come see me in my office and say, would you talk to me about, I'm thinking about this job or thinking about something, and would you be willing to spend some time with me? And I always loved doing that because they were just lovely people, and it wasn't easy to forge your way through the workplace, and there weren't a lot of opportunities, and you had many times had to create your own. And that's why I'm such an advocate of volunteering, because I would not have had the experience I had. I wasn't trained in public relations. I wasn't a marketing major or a communications major, but some of the volunteer experiences I had really helped build some of those skills. And then surrounding yourself with very, very capable people helps a great deal.
Well, we've talked about that you were a founding member of the Nevada Women's Fund, and the women of bringing the women of achievement. Community service is a big portion of the definition of you. What other projects and or anything in particular that you remember coming to the forefront?
Well, the most challenging was when I was at Washoe Health System. Being in medicine, you have a lot of indicators of health, and you measure a lot. And there were a number of examples I could follow, and there was a group of internal medicine physicians who were doing some very progressive work in the community on measuring birth rate and so on. The other issue was this continual struggle of Reno. What can we do about the city of Reno? And you go way back. Mark Curtis at Harrah's was very involved,
Wow.
and I worked with him in starting the biggest little city, and really trying to get the community cleaned up. And I can remember when I was at Harrah's, we had a group that went out one day and we picked up cigarette butts along the railroad tracks just to clean it up. And but community and being a better community was always on the forefront. Well, there were other examples of Kentucky. I think it was Kentucky Tomorrow. Oh, Cleveland Tomorrow was what it was.
Right.
Cleveland Tomorrow. And what inspired Cleveland was when the river caught on fire. And they decided, as a community, we need to do something. We need to clean this place up. So this was always in the back of the mind of how we can improve our community, make it more attractive. And we decided to look into these Cleveland Tomorrows, and there was places in Kentucky that had done some things. And Lisa Urquiaga at that time was with the Regional Planning Commission, and she was doing a lot of work along these lines. So we started an organization, and the seeding grant came from Washoe Health System to start an organization called Truckee Meadows Tomorrow.
Wow.
And
You were at the birth of a lot of
Wow.
incredible babies.
And
Washoe County.
Elisa and I trudged down that road, and we and had a lot of community volunteers. There was an organization, and we identified all these indicators of education, of health, of arts and culture, business, the environment, and that was a real challenge. And trying to get people to understand what Truckee Meadows Tomorrow was doing was really difficult. That you measure where you are, and then you try to improve those, and you find the weak spots and the doable ones at first, so you can see some improvement and encourage you to continue, and then you tackle the harder ones. So we worked through regional planning, and regional planning was great. The county was very supportive, but it was tough. And then we had people who were very concerned about us, that because we were geared also toward the environment, water, of course, a very valuable resource and limited here, that we would curtail growth. And that, so, there was this growth versus non-growth issue, but we kind of got beyond that. But what
Yeah,
amazed
you
me,
didn't curtail growth, by the way.
no,
I
it didn't
know.
curtail growth.
Yeah.
But what amazed me is Truckee Meadows Tomorrow still exists.
Yeah.
But there's so many programs that you helped to build and found that still exist. I mean, how does that feel, Lynn, that your legacy that you helped to create lives on for decades after its initial creation?
Well, obviously, I'm very proud, but it took a whole lot
should
of
be.
other people, to sustain that. And it's had great leadership and support by many people.
But isn't it interesting, though, that you're
Oh,
the
it's
common
just
denominator with a lot of
like
these
that.
really core principles and evolutions of Northern Nevada, of how we see it today? So,
That's amazing. There's another one we haven't talked about.
yeah.
I didn't know your role with the Terry Lee Wells Foundation.
Yes, that came at a good time. It was after I retired, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It was a limited amount of money. It wasn't a foundation that was to go on forever. But shortly after I retired, this young man wanted to meet with me and talk about an idea he had. His name was Chris Reish, smartest young man I've met. Whoever came to me with an idea, he had a total business plan laid out from start to finish on how he wanted to create a children's museum or a discovery museum. And I was just in awe of what he had presented to me and tried to help see how he could accomplish this dream. But he really carried the ball and got it started. And it was on its way. Had hired an executive director, museum director, when I went on the board of the museum of the Terry Lee Wells Foundation. So I was an advocate of, since the foundation had limited of funds, why not take a significant portion of that and do a naming in Terry Lee Wells' name that would sustain and be here for many, many years. And so we did. We all the trustees, strong believers in that project, and we did. We gave, I believe, at that time $4 million. Over time, we gave probably close to $6 million in different grants for the Terry Lee Wells Museum. But it's just a wonderful addition and quality of life of our community.
And I remember when we moved here in 2004, that it was not here yet. And I came from the Midwest, and that was one of the first things I looked for. Where's the Children's Museum? Where's the Children's Museum? What a beautiful legacy. It's just a fantastic museum.
Yeah, it is. And it's had an exceptional director who is leaving us.
Yes, I know.
Which is, but I am a strong believer in that. When I worked at Harrah's, they were the gold standard in terms of tracking gaming customers and all the fine points of gaming. And they never balked. Everyone wanted to steal their employees because they had great training and they were excellent employees. And they never balked or never said, no, or you have to sign a non-compete or whatever. They said, no, you go on. If you can do better, please do. And I tried to practice that. I can remember a couple times working at Washoe in my department, and we had several people who came from the television industry to be in the communications department. And a couple times came and said, Lynn, I want to move on. I want to go. And it was very sad to have them leave. But I said, no, if you can advance your career, and if you think that's the right fit for you, just make sure it's the right fit, that you'll be happy there. But sometimes you have to take risks and
Absolutely.
fail and then move on. But they would move on. And so I really believe in that, in encouraging people to take that step. If you think you can move on, do so. And that really came from Harrah's.
I love it.
I know.
Well, speaking of Harrah's, and you have so many different experiences with really powerhouse organizations in the area. So, is there a little hidden gem in Reno that you think people should know about, like a little best kept secret?
Oh gosh, I think there's so many things. I still think the Discovery Museum is one that a lot of people are not aware of, and others, I don't know. I think it's just this what a great community this is, and the Truckee Meadows Tomorrow was built on the concept of quality of life, and we had the quality of life indicators. So you just can't beat it. That you can go up and ski in the morning and come back and play golf in the afternoon.
Right.
And where else could you do that?
Couldn't do that where I was from, for sure. But one more question, Lynn, just because we have had such a beautiful glimpse of looking back with you and understanding your contributions and the contributions of the things that have been built. Let's look forward. What's your advice for future leaders?
Well, I think that's it. Understand some leadership skills. And I think for women, we need to continue to make the workplace a better place for women. As a nation, as a country, we are not like European countries that really, I think, value more women in the workplace. They have better benefits. They do flex time. They do paternity leave. They really make it easier for women to work. And in this country, we're not there yet. So I think as women, we need to be much stronger advocates for a better workplace for women. And we're fortunate. The three of us sit in management positions and we're paid well. We have good benefits and a very nice place to work. But most women do not. They're in service jobs. They don't make a lot of money. They're not in an environment that encourages the heart and enables or challenges the process and so on. So I think we need to challenge the process. We need to be more tuned in to making this a better place for women to enjoy the workplace. Wages are still not, we fought for this for years and years and years, and women are still paid less than men. And I think women are willing to make trade-offs and understand if you give me more flex time. I still have to be home at night and cook dinner and do the laundry. And although men are becoming much more participatory in that, but it's still women's work, sort of, to balance it all. And so I think we need to step it up a little bit. And I'm so pleased that the Women's Fund is doing what they are doing in International Women's Day and engaging workplaces to get more tuned in to what is a better environment, for everybody, and not just women, but everybody, minorities and people of color. And it's just, we can do a lot better than we're doing, I think.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us and getting to know you. What a great
You
conversation.
can see why I have a little hero worship here.
I
You
can.
can see where that's coming from.
And you are right. We do. We have a great job. We have a great place. We get to talk to people like you.
Mhm.
It's good. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
We learned a lot.
And-
And thanks for hanging in today, Tammy, and giving us your insights.
Oh my gosh, it was.
I learned things about both of you today that I didn't know. I appreciate that. And if you ever have an idea for Washoe Life, please email us at washoe311@washoecounty.gov. And until next time, we hope you enjoy your life.